want to come back to the word virtue, which, I mean, we associate that with Aristotle. I mean, he saw virtue as being a core piece of happiness. Sort of my understanding of virtue is it's doing good in the world, right?
Well, I would say, in my mind, it is, and I think actually a lot of the research shows that the happiest people in the world are people who don't focus on their own happiness, but that are actually in the service of others. And I think, actually, your friend Dr. Gilbert says, he has a great quote where he says, "Go volunteer at a homeless shelter. You may not help the homeless, but you're definitely going to help yourself." Yeah. So, helping other people.
If you do good, you will feel good.
Exactly, helping other people may be one of the best ways to help yourself.
But I don't think that was Aristotle's understanding
of virtue.
I mean, it's true that the word virtue changes a lot, but Aristotle's conception of happiness is what psychologists and philosophers would call now a eudaimic, from the word eudaimonia, which is the Greek word for happiness or flourishing, right? As opposed to a hedonic conception, which is about pleasure. Aristotle believed that living virtuously, which for him meant living well, right? Living as one is supposed to live, realizing one's full potential. Potential that most people won't realize, frankly, because it's too hard. Living well will have as a byproduct pleasure. There'll also be pain. But virtue is its own reward in this respect. And one of the things I think is so exciting about the new research, psychological research on happiness that people like Barry have been doing, is that in some ways they're validating older notions. So our colleague John Haidt, who's a social psychologist, wrote this wonderful book, The Happiness Hypothesis, Finding Modern Truth in Ancient Wisdom. Aristotle says one of the virtues is magnificence. You've got to be generous. You have to give your money away, right? That is a key element of a flourishing, happy life. But and it turns out that's true.
So don't we all know people, though, they've devoted their lives to doing good, saving the world, and they're sometimes miserable. You can look at them and you just say, it's just sort of like they've become martyrs almost to try to do good. And so are we really willing to sort of conflate these notions of virtue and happiness?
That hasn't been my experience. I haven't seen that, actually. The people that I feel that I've, in my life experience, and really after interviewing 70 people for this book, I actually find it the opposite. I think the people who focus more on themselves are the least happy people that I've met, actually. And the people who are able to go out and do something in the world, it gives their life a perspective. And we talked a little bit about this before, which is that it really depends on how you're defining what success is, what happiness is. And if you have a very narrow perspective on what success is, and we were talking about how narrow it really is, it's you're only seeing the immediate vicinity of your world. You're not seeing the way other people live, and so you have a super narrow perspective. And there's a great interview that I did for the book, and it actually really was part of my own experience of the book, which was this Virtue Foundation, which was working in Cambodia, and there was a baby who was doused with acid. And this Dr. Lai, came back, and he had seen this baby. He had worked on this baby, he had operated on it, and I saw this film about this baby. And I was working at the time at Avon, and I had been doing a lot of great work in my life, but until I saw that child being doused with acid at 6 weeks old, I didn't realize the way the rest of the world was really living. And it changed my whole perspective about what I could do from where I was sitting. And I have found that the more that you can get out of your narrow frame of reference and expand, and I think Barry speaks about this very well in The Paradox of Choice, which is the curse of expectations. What are our expectations about success? How are we defining success in this culture right now? And how narrow is our framework? And I think people who actually go out and really get out of themselves and help other people, it changes their perspective about what normal is. And it's not your media friends and keeping up with the Kardashians, but it's what is normal in this world and your definition of normal. And you realize that gratitude really, I think, becomes one of the keys that can unlock happiness and meaning. And so I have actually found it's the opposite.
But I do think, I think it's possible to live a good life, a virtuous life, a life that serves other people and be miserable. And the question is, how is that possible? And I think that that the answer is that happiness, meaning positive emotion, is not just about being virtuous. So you talk about defining success. Suppose your aim in your life is to eliminate global warming, and you get 80% of the way there. And on your deathbed, I ask you, are you happy? And you say, I am miserable, because I thought we would eliminate global warming, and all we did was take a few baby steps in that direction. So you're unhappy because you failed. you had what you might argue are unreasonably high aspirations.
Yes.
And it raises, though, an interesting question. Is it possible to you to say of someone, he or she is happy, even though he or she says they're not? That is, one view, and I think this is not unlike what Aristotle might say, is that happiness is actually an objective, not a subjective state. If you have achieved excellence, you have achieved a eudaimonic condition, you have lived out your purpose as a human being, then whether you're walking around with a smiling face or not is incidental. What matters is that you have done what human beings are supposed to do, and that makes you happy. Even if you're in fact mostly depressed. Now, most everybody in modern society thinks that happiness is entirely subjective.
Right.
So that if I say I'm unhappy, you can't say, no, you're not.
Right.
You're happy. That just makes no sense. It's incoherent. We get to say whether we're happy or not. You get to say whether we should be happy, but you don't get to say whether we actually are happy. That's our private province. We don't have to think about it in that way, but that certainly has become like second nature.